Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Transformers Book Club. This is the holiday special episode. And since it's the holiday special, I thought maybe we'd have some people joining us this time who haven't joined us before. So I thought it might be a good chance for me to introduce myself. Actually, even those of you who watch the show regularly have never seen me. I don't appear in the videos. And that's just because, well, for a bunch of reasons really, but mostly because editing it would be a real pain. Because I'm reading from notes, I'll be looking down like this all the time. And really, this podcast and video series is about the comics, and I thought nobody really needs to see all this when there's all those pages of gorgeous art to look at. This is the first time I've appeared in a video. I thought I'd do that just to say hello right at the beginning here and explain a little bit about the show before we get going and looking at the comics that we're going to be reading today. Hello. I'm Gary, I'm 38 years old, and I'm the host of Transformers AutoBook Club, which I actually called Transformers Book Club a moment ago. As you can see, I'm not used to being on video at all, and one of the main reasons I don't want to appear on video, besides the fact that nobody needs to see my face, is that editing this is so hard. And I already read from a script, so I can't imagine trying to edit myself reading a script to the camera, like, no way. And then, also I want to have guests on, which is adding a whole nother layer of editing mess I just don't want to deal with. So yeah, this is not going to be a regular thing. I might do some streams later on. I've wanted to do that for a while. That was my original plan over the Christmas holiday, was to do like some streams of just playing Transformers games or building some model kits. I have 2 model kits over there that I've been wanting to build for a long time, and I was saving those for streams. But as some of you might know, I moved in October, and when I applied to get fiber internet put into my apartment in October, they told me the earliest they had available was December. But of course in December, all my coworkers wanted to travel, so I couldn't take any days off to be at the house for them to try to install it. So I have to wait till January. And in Japan, where I live, the New Year's holiday is more important than the Christmas holiday. So everybody's closed and nobody's working. So I have to wait till January 7th for somebody to come to my house to see if I can have fiber internet installed. And if I can't, then I have to go back and get really outdated internet that even the people at the shop told me don't really bother with that. So that's me. But what about Transformers AutoBook Club? The idea of this came from the comments page of the Kickstarter. There were so many people there discussing the books and all being excited for the stretch goals and all that kind of stuff, talking about their favorite memories, their favorite moments from the comics, their favorite characters. And I thought, why isn't there a Discord for this? And then I thought even further, like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a book club on that Discord so everybody could read an issue a week of their comics once they come? Nobody made it, so I made it myself. Actually, though, the Discord and the community element hasn't taken off as much as I had hoped it would. But I'm having so much fun doing this that I don't want to stop. It is time-consuming, but I'm managing to put out 1 episode a week. It is a lot of work reading the comic, then writing, like copious amounts of notes, and then recording the audio, editing the audio, which I have recently kind of refined my process and made that a bit quicker. I also have to edit all the images too, so it's a lot of work, and regardless, I still want to keep doing it, so I think that means I'm doing the right thing, right? So, if you've never joined us before, Transformers AutoBook Club is a weekly video and podcast series where I and a guest read, discuss, and deep dive into 1 issue of the Marvel Transformers comics from the 1980s. We've just passed our 12th episode, which means I've been able to keep this up on a weekly schedule for about 3 months now. Come January, I should have internet at my house, finally, so I should be able to go back to having regular guests. And I'd like to try some streams too, just for fun, like building Transformers model kits or maybe playing some Transformers video games, which I'm a big fan of too. That was actually my plan to do over the holiday break, but I won't have internet until January, so those things have been pushed back a little bit. So, introductions out of the way. What are we going to be reading today? Today we're going to be reading 2 Transformers Christmas Special comics. Actually, in the Marvel US comics, it looks like there weren't any Christmas specials, but they had a bunch of them in the Marvel UK comics. For those of you who don't know, we're following the new Til All Are One reading order. That's from the Skybound Transformers Compendium Kickstarter, which was successfully funded a few months back, and now people have started to get their books. If you stick around and watch the video after the comics have ended, I'll have a little bit of footage and some images from some lucky people in our Discord who got their copies already. So normally we're going to be following that new reading order, which puts the US and the UK comics in about the most chronological way that's possible. It's not always seamless, but they've done their best. We are breaking that reading order now, though, to do the Christmas specials because, 1, the Christmas specials are going to come later than the things that we're reading currently. We're about to read issue 6 of the US comic. The Christmas specials obviously come a bit later, and we're skipping ahead even more because we can't read the very first Christmas special. I looked that up on the Transformers wiki, and I found out that there's some stuff in there that is a bit of a spoiler for where we're headed now. The Christmas specials that I did pick were ones that didn't have too much spoilery stuff going on. There is a little bit, but out of context, it doesn't really spoil too much. And actually, something in here, instead of spoiling anything, just gives me so many questions about what the hell is going on later. For those of you who are new, that's kind of a running theme for the show too. These comics are all over the place. I love them. I genuinely love them, but they're so insane. Some of the directions they go in are just not anything I would ever have expected. We're going to be reading a Christmas special called Stargazing. That was in the UK comics in 1987. And we're going to go and read the next Christmas special from 1988. That's called Cold Comfort and Joy. So now that I've said hello and you've seen my face, I'm going to hide it again behind the comics because let's dive into our first Christmas special from 1987, Stargazing. We begin with Starscream here, and the narration telling us about his reputation as one of the most ruthless and treacherous Decepticons. Or it says, at least, he was. He's looking up at the sky and it's snowing because it's Christmas, so of course it is. And Starscream thinks about Cybertron, and that it's still up there somewhere. And he says, my world, my home. More sentimental than you'd expect from Starscream. He seems like he's feeling homesick and nostalgic for Cybertron before the war. And down here at the bottom we've got the credits. The plot was by Simon Furman, the script was by Ian Rimmer, pencils by Jeff Anderson, inks by somebody just called Baskerville, I guess that's somebody's last name, letters by Annie H, and color by Ewan Peters. And you can tell this is a UK issue because color has a U in it down here. That's what he thinks about on the next page too. He learned to fight, cheat, and betray on Cybertron, all for the Decepticons. But then he corrects himself and he says, no, for myself. But, he says again, it's out there somewhere. And wherever it is, he's been dreaming of leading the Decepticons to victory over the Autobots there. And he says he's lost count of all those he's taken out, on both the Autobot and Decepticon sides, all as a means to that end goal. Next, there's a short story spoiler. I decided to take an unusual measure and blank it out. It's nothing major, and without context, I don't think it spoils much personally, but I thought it would be best to blank it out and just to give you a warning beforehand, and then show it. So if you don't want to hear it, skip ahead maybe 20 seconds or so. Starscream says that the pursuit of that goal almost cost him his life, and that 3 Autobots put him into a sleep capsule in which he stayed trapped for an undetermined amount of time. But ultimately, it opened up again, and Starscream found himself here. But when it opened, he says, so did his eyes. So having all that time to think, and I guess only think, shifted Starscream's perspective and outlook. He wants to put aside thoughts of the war, and which faction will win. He just wants to see Cybertron again. Well, actually, he says, my home again, so he really seems to be sincerely pining for Cybertron. From beneath a street lamp, a kid calls to Starscream, saying, you're a Transformer, aren't you? And Starscream, for all the misty-eyed listlessness he just showed us, snaps, you're an aggravation I could do without. And he tells the kid to go away. But the kid asks what Starscream's name is, and that really ticks him off. He asks the kid if he's deaf or just stupid, and he tells him to go away again. Talking kind of to himself, maybe half to the kid too, he says it shows what a bad state he's in if he doesn't even feel like squashing a, quote, fleshling. The kid has had enough this time, and he tells Starscream that he's a miserable lump of metal. But it's Christmas Eve, a time for joy and happiness. Right out of a Christmas movie, this guy. Starscream comments that it's also a time for annoying pests, and he gives the kid his last warning to leave him alone. For some reason, the kid says no. If Starscream only understood Christmas and what it's all about, he'd cheer up for sure. Jeez, it really is like every Christmas movie. This kid is really persistent though. He pushes Starscream to admit that he doesn't really know anything about Christmas, and Starscream relents, though begrudgingly, saying very well, and that he doesn't know how the Autobots managed to be friendly with the humans. As always, Autobuddies and Deceptichums, I know it's only for the story and for the plot, but this kid is batshit insane. Starscream is taller than an apartment building, and he could, flick this kid's head off with his pinky. I have no clue why he came out of nowhere and decided he'd stand up to Starscream. About Christmas, of all things? For pretty much no reason at all. Starscream giving up and agreeing to let this guy teach him about Christmas also comes out of nowhere, too. Starscream doesn't care about humans at all, much less human culture or customs, but I guess it would be a much less festive holiday special if he just downright refused and then ruined some family's Christmas by decapitating their son for, being abnormally into Christmas. Starscream does something I've never seen before. He accesses his internal data file. So it's like a Wikipedia in his brain. But it's not all just ambiently accessible. He has to, intentionally go looking for things in there. And when he does, his eyes glow yellow, and he looks up Christmas, and he starts to reel off facts about it. After a few sentences, he tires of it already, and cuts it off, saying, and so on. And he says, okay, as in asking the kid if he's satisfied now and if he will finally leave him alone. Which of course the kid says he won't. He says that Starscream's mechanical understanding of facts doesn't allow him to understand the spirit of Christmas. I do. It's whiskey. Lots of whiskey. The kid begins, "Let me explain." And Starscream reaches the end of his rope now and yells back, "No, you! Let me explain this." And he snatches the kid up in his hand and he's holding him right there in front of his face. And he tells the kid if he says anything further, he won't live to see the Christmas he's so fond of. Finally, the kid agrees to stop talking and go home if Starscream puts him down. But the kid's mention of home brings Starscream's wistful melancholy crashing back instantly. And he says that he envies the kid because he has a home he can reach easily. You okay, Starscream? Those are some extreme gear changes and mood swings. All that time alone wasn't good for you, I don't think. Not that you were the most stable guy before, I guess, really, but to move the plot along and give the kid some exposition, he points and says, "Do what I can't and go home." And he pauses for a moment before asking if the kid is still there, which he answers yes, he is, and that if Starscream will just let him show him the spirit of Christmas, he's, quote, sure that it will make Starscream feel happier. He literally just now made it so clear what's bumming him out, and it's nothing that Christmas, an alien celebration from another culture he doesn't care about, is going to fix. He's homesick, and if anything, it's going to make it worse. But this kid is like hyper-fixated on Christmas and apparently doesn't understand social cues, so who knows, maybe he'll get a diagnosis for Christmas. But once again, Starscream gives in and says, "Oh, very well," and transforms into his jet mode, which the kid is impressed by. Why they had to have this back and forth twice, only Ian Rimmer knows. But finally, it seems that Starscream is on board to let this kid show him whatever it is he so desperately wants to show him. The kid, it's unusual for these comics to have a major or minor character, actually, that doesn't get a name, especially one that's male. I'm surprised we've gotten this far without him introducing himself. Anyway, the kid asks where they're going, and Starscream asks directions to this spirit of Christmas. The kid suggests that they follow the road. Maybe they'll be able to see some people exchanging gifts, which, I don't know about you, is the tradition in my family. We all stand outside next to traffic and give each other presents. Starscream says, "I can hardly wait," which I can hear in Starscream's sarcastic voice from the cartoon in my mind. The kid says Starscream can poke fun, but he needs to understand the feelings that come with giving and receiving presents. He says they're the real gifts of Christmas. I kind of have to begrudgingly agree. While this kid is so much too much, as an adult, yeah, the best feeling is knowing that you got something awesome for someone important to you, and it's getting to do something nice for them, knowing you're making them happy. That's actually the best part of giving somebody a gift, whatever the occasion. And actually, let me be really cheesy a bit, since it's the holiday special, and share something that I've only recently kind of realized and learned myself. There is a grace and generosity in being a good receiver of gifts too. I used to be very sheepish and feel embarrassed when somebody offered me something. I was the type who turned down an offer of a snack or a drink from someone because I didn't want to inconvenience them or impose upon them. My mum often, I was going to say offers me money, but actually sometimes she just sends it without asking. Though I'm doing the most well for myself that I've ever done. It's because they care about us that they offer these things. And sometimes, not every time, it's case by case, but turning it down so as not to be a burden is actually sometimes taking away someone else's chance to use their actions to show you that they care about you. It can be really hard to learn the habit, but sometimes a very sincere thank you can be better than a polite no thank you. There you go. That's a little holiday, I hesitate to say wisdom, but something to mull over. So the kid says that's why people help the needy and the hungry at Christmas too, which is a philosophical pedro rabbit hole we're going to stay well away from today. Starscream laughs and says that giving is something that the weak do, while the strong take. He tells the kid that the way he thinks is like an Autobot, but the kid urges him to keep an open mind. While down on the ground, a patrol car seems to turn very sharply and suddenly, in the snow even, that's impressive, and it starts to follow Starscream. The kid notices a retirement home bus that's stuck in the snow, and he tells Starscream to land close to it. Which, this could have ended so badly, but luckily for the elderly, it's Christmas, which gives them plot armor strong enough to repel even Starscream. Instead though, Starscream transforms midair, which looks like it ejects the kid, because he says, "Yow! Nice catch!" And we can see in the artwork there, Starscream has caught him in his palm while he's landing on his feet in the snow. The kid notes that the bus is full of elderly people, likely on their way to some kind of Christmas celebration. Though if you stop and look at the panel, there's no road. The bus is just driven across a huge open field with what looks like a forest around it. I don't know where they were meant to be going, but the driver either has a plan of their own or has passed out at the wheel, hammered. It's that Christmas spirit back again. I told you, whiskey. He says that the old folks have probably been looking forward to this celebration all year, and now they're stuck in the snow and freezing cold. And Starscream says, "So?" and we get a shot from inside the bus where it looks like a riot is starting. The old guy at the back in a green hat is shaking a fist, and like 5 old people look like they're all ganging up on this old lady, who has either a big black hat or a big hairdo. And someone's hand looks like it's shoving her too. I think they're all supposed to be looking out of the window angrily at Starscream, though he isn't the one who crashed their bus. Maybe they recognize him and his reputation from the news? I don't know. Anyway, this kid is so ballsy, you gotta give it to him. Starscream clearly doesn't care for him, and he's holding back from losing his temper. But that doesn't stop the kid yelling, "So help them!" to Starscream. He tells Starscream to get the bus out of the snow, and that he should think of doing that good deed as a Christmas present to all those people on board. Starscream doesn't understand this concept at all, despite the research he did in his databank. He says, "What's in it for me?" with this slight snarl to his face, like he's either confused or infuriated or both. Behind him, we can see the police car from earlier catching up to him. And in the next panel, while the kid is explaining that Starscream should just go ahead and do it to find out how it feels to do something nice, he's cut off mid-sentence by, I guess, the tires of the police car screeching as it comes to a very sharp stop behind them. It turns out that it was an Autobot called Streetwise who, actually I should know, having recently watched the first 2 seasons of the cartoon, but the Protectobots feature quite seldomly, and even then, only really a little bit when they're in it at all. There are so many names to remember, and it's even harder when they have the same general description as someone else. Streetwise isn't even the only police car, so forgive me for conflating him with Prowl. It's Christmas, after all. Forgiveness and all that stuff, right? Streetwise fires off a laser at Starscream, who's so busy with the bus that he doesn't even have time to react. He gets hit, and he falls back. Streetwise tells him to back off, and he tells the people on board the bus not to worry, he's come to save them. Streetwise says that he scanned Starscream while he was flying overhead, which is lucky for the humans on the bus and unlucky for Starscream. And while Starscream is down, he takes the opportunity to shoot him in the shoulder. Streetwise says he's about to make sure that Starscream never bothers any humans again, and Starscream laments that he was too busy talking to the kid, the nameless kid. This far into the story, he's never going to get a name, but he was so busy talking to this nameless kid that he didn't notice Streetwise drive up, transform, and shoot at him until it was too late. In the panel that he's saying that, out loud, because as we learned in the recent past, Decepticons have no internal monologue, apparently, Streetwise fires on him 3 more times, and it looks kind of like he's going for a headshot. Probably not the intention of the artist, but now it does look like he's trying to execute Starscream with a shot to the head. And Starscream manages to stand up despite the barrage of laser fire, and says that it's not too late to counterattack and get rid of the Autobot. So he starts firing back with his lasers, while Streetwise continues to fire at him, though he's missing with 1 shot, and just clipping Starscream's shoulder vent thing with the other. Starscream's lasers are too much for Streetwise, who decides that his best bet is to transform and to use his car form to dodge Starscream's shots, which he's fast enough to do. Get up close, and then do a kind of lunge while transforming to tackle Starscream, which is a really cool maneuver, and it pays off too. Starscream wasn't prepared for that, and he grunts and gets thrown to the ground. Perilously close to that bus, actually. It's lucky for Streetwise that Starscream didn't fall much more to the left, otherwise he'd have a bus full of crushed pensioners to explain. Starscream's hand is just about touching the back of the bus. The old guys inside think the same thing too. One remarks on how close a call that was, and another says that clearly neither of these robots is filling in for Santa this year. Kind of a weird remark, but we'll respect our elders and leave that alone. Also, for some reason, the guy who says that appears to be Freddy Krueger. The hat he's wearing and the wrinkles they've given him make him look exactly like him. It's creepy. Daniel Warren Johnson would be proud of Streetwise now, who's coming in with some kind of wrestling move, diving on Starscream while he's on his back in the snow. And he says, "Now, Decepticon scum, you die." Which seems a bit much, maybe. But Starscream is a constant menace, and I guess wanting to take him out now, while he's at a disadvantage, makes some sense. It's just kind of rare for anyone, in my experience, in Transformers to specifically mention or aim for death. But it's okay anyway, because Starscream has time to react this time, and he kicks a leg upwards fast enough to counter Streetwise's lunge, and there's a whack sound effect. And Streetwise gets this red halo, which is festive. He looks like one of those portraits of saints. Kind of fitting for Christmas, I suppose. Starscream says, "Do me a favour, street wreck," which makes sense in England, but maybe not elsewhere, especially now that the phrase isn't really commonly used even in England anymore. But "do me a favour" used to be used as a way to show incredulity about something someone just said, and it's a bit sarcastic and dismissive, like you're saying, "I don't believe you, and what you just said is stupid." I don't know the origin. Explaining it to you now, it's confusing and makes no sense, but that's British slang for you, you slags. Rodimus is a great Autobot leader and a worthy successor to Optimus Prime. What? Rodimus? Do me a favour? Sorry, I just watched 5 Faces of Darkness, and the way Rodimus behaves, having just ascended to leader, is so disrespectful to the title and to Optimus Prime's legacy. considering Prime died because of Hot Rod, and for some reason chose to pass the Matrix to him. You'd think he'd put in at least a little bit of effort, but he spends a lot of time moping or sounding disinterested in everything. It's crazy that this was the new guy they wanted us to be rooting for, and that they wrote him like that. And sure, maybe he's dealing with grief and guilt, but if that's the case, they don't lay that out. Anyway, I'm tangenting. Starscream says, "It's you who's gonna get," but the kid, again, showing that he has giant steel balls, yells at both of the giant robots who could easily smush him in a second to stop fighting. He tells Streetwise off and says that he should be ashamed of himself because Starscream was trying to help the people on the bus. I guess he has no idea who Starscream or the Decepticons are, and why seeing one near a busload of humans would be alarming to an Autobot. Completely reasonable assumption on Streetwise's part, if you ask me. The kid goes so far as to say that the people almost got hurt because of Streetwise and his attitude. Thinking the way that he did makes him as bad, if not worse, than the Decepticons. Yeah, this kid doesn't watch the news, or go outside, or talk to anyone. He just sits in his room and thinks about Christmas. Come on, bud. But his speech appeals to Starscream's mischievous nature because he takes the opportunity to rub it in Streetwise's face and tells him to watch what he's about to do. He picks that moment to get the bus out of the snow and tell the humans on board that they're free. Cheers come from the bus, and someone says that Starscream is like a 50-foot Santa. So whoever this is and Freddy are going to have a disagreement. Streetwise is confused and begins to say that no Decepticon has ever... But Starscream butts in and says, "Heh, it's just because..." And then the kid cuts him off to say, "It's Christmas!" Which, I don't know about you, is not where I thought Starscream was going with that sentence. Streetwise goes along with it though, and says that in any case, he still wants to escort the bus to wherever it's going to make sure it gets there safely. He checks again that the kid wants to stay where he is with Starscream, and the kid replies that he does and that he'll be fine. The people inside the bus thank Starscream again, and the bus, now escorted by Streetwise, drives off. Later on, Starscream is standing by a Christmas tree that looks taller than he is, so that thing must be absolutely massive. And the kid is lecturing him about the spirit of Christmas. Again. He says that giving someone else help when they need it can also make you feel good, and reassured that maybe next time you need help, it will be you who is assisted by someone else. Starscream says, "Hardly human." The kid says, surely Starscream felt pleased when those people in the bus were cheering for him. But Starscream tells the kid that he misunderstood the whole situation. The only thing that made him happy during that whole experience was humiliating Streetwise. And the kid is taken aback and is in disbelief that Starscream really means what he just said. And he can't even form a reply. All he can think to do is say, "Merry Christmas." And he begins to walk away, and he starts crying. Poor guy, he really tried his best, and he was extraordinarily, maybe even psychotically brave in his interactions with these giant robots he clearly knows very little, if anything, about. Starscream yells, "Ha!" But for a brief moment, he thinks about everything that just happened, and he reluctantly ends this issue by saying, "Oh, Merry Christmas, kid," and giving him a wave. And we can see the kid there, turning to face him and being very surprised. And that's all for our first Christmas story. Though that kid was so annoying, he was clearly kind of a spoof of generic Christmas movie tropes, so I found it really funny that they decided to use him and his shtick as a way to show Starscream not learning anything about humans, Christmas, or charity. That's exactly what I would have expected from Starscream. It's a little bit subtle, probably because of the small page count, but I like that they tried to subvert the old Christmas story tropes of someone learning a lesson with a character that it fits perfectly for. I think it goes nicely with the next story, which is a happy coincidence. I didn't plan that, but it works out nicely, I think. So let's move right along onto our next Christmas story, Cold, Comfort, and Joy. Right at the beginning here on the cover are 3 characters we don't know yet, but they do feature a bit in this story. But again, out of context, there's no real spoilers here. Basically, they're friends of the Autobots, I think. In the background there, having a snowball fight, there are 3 Autobots we haven't met yet either, but again, meeting them here doesn't really spoil anything. So it's pretty safe to just let them be generic Autobots for the purposes of this story. The person on the left, wearing dark blue and grey, says, "Go to Earth," they said. The middle one, in brown, says, "You don't know what Christmas is about," they said. And the one on the right, in the purple, says, "We'll explain all about peace and the spirit of goodwill," they said. Is this a Three Stooges reference or something? I don't know. They're going for something with these speech bubbles, right? But I don't know what. I checked the wiki and helpfully it lists real-world references and things, but it didn't have any help for me on this one. On the first page, we open up on my favorite image of Prime from everything we've read so far. I think I mentioned it in the past that I really like the designs of the Blockies Action Edition Transformers figures, and I really like this Prime too for the same reason. He looks so bulky, and somehow manages that without looking boxy. It just makes him look hardy and tough, and the proportions are just a little bit off, but in a way that appeals to me. Everything on him just looks big and chunky and robust. It's awesome. Down here in the credits, it says that Andy Wildman did the pencils for this, so I'll keep my eye out for that name again in the future. The wiki didn't help me with that cover, but it did have a story about Wildman for us, so I'll share it here. This was an early work by Wildman, and Simon Furman, who was the editor at the time, and, as we'll get to in a moment, didn't write this issue, but did provide the plot, called Wildman on the phone to explain the changes that needed to be made to his art. Quote, from context, I gather this is from Furman. It went on for about 25 minutes, and he laughs there. Apparently, everyone stopped work and listened, and felt sorry for Andrew at the other end of the phone. Wildman said, I really upped my game because I realized that there were certain things I needed to do. I was relatively fresh into comics, and if I was to have any kind of career in this, I needed to respond to the demands that were being made of me. So I was pulled up, which, just in case that's not a phrase outside of the UK, it means the same as called out. It's used in the same way too. He called me out on it, he pulled me up on it. So he said, I was pulled up, I felt really pissed about it for 10 minutes, and then I thought, I'll just do it. I haven't seen the unrevised pencils, but thank goodness that he did make those changes because, yeah, this is a seriously cool picture of Prime. Stephen Baskerville inked it, so I guess that's Baskerville from last issue. I don't know why they omitted his first name last time and they put it in this time. Ewan Peters colored it, and letters this issue are by Glib. I don't know if that's a surname or an unusual pseudonym. And our old friend Simon Furman plotted the issue, but Ian Rimmer scripted it, which is interesting. Prime's standing out in the snow, which is piling up on his shoulders, so he's clearly been there for a while. It's Christmas Day, 1988, and Prime has returned to Earth after some time away. Where he's been and what has happened is, out of context, more confusing than a spoiler, but we can carry on with the story just fine if I tell you he's been gone for a while and his memory's hazy. He says the Autobots have told him that once upon a time he'd have happily risked his life to save the Earth and the people that live on it, but that was a long time ago. Did his time away from Earth really change him so much that that memory now feels distant? Looking at it now, he says that he can't imagine what he ever saw in a place like this, so yeah, Prime's all out of sorts. He's not feeling any loyalty in particular to Earth, but having been told that he was once so invested in it is confusing to him in his current state of mind. The person we can see in the foreground of this next panel is named High Q. I don't know if that's read as High IQ or High Q like haiku, but whoever he is, he's a recent friend of Optimus's, and he's much more enamored with Earth than Prime is right now. Because, Prime speculates, it's also new to him. And High Q is enjoying himself. He's looking at the snow and he's holding out a hand to catch some. Prime wonders if the events of his recent time away have somehow changed or diminished the feelings that he once held for Earth. He thinks, the thoughts I feel now owe little to the Prime of old. Which feels... Furman was thorough enough to spend 25 minutes on the phone with Wildman about his artwork, but he let the phrase, the thoughts I feel, slide? You think thoughts, and you feel feelings. I don't know which one Prime is telling us about, but either way, he can tell that they're different to how they would have been a long time ago. He thinks that now, protecting the humans and their world have all become secondary in his mind. Secondary to crushing the evil enemies of the Autobots, the Decepticons. And as he thinks that, he's dramatically, or suggestively, depending on your outlook, crushing the top of a fir tree with his fist. And that fir tree was covered in snow, so all that snow falls onto Prime's knuckles? No, I'm not suggesting it looks like anything. You had that thought all on your own. At Christmas. Really. Disgraceful behaviour. Prime continues to search his memories. What was it that motivated him in the past? Why was he so resolute to save the humans? Logic says that his main aim should have been stopping the Decepticons at all costs. He also has a creeping sense that if he can't find the answers to those questions, the Decepticons will, quote, hail it as their ultimate victory, which, another aside here, I know you love 'em, is something I've always thought about in stories about large-scale battles or power clashes. The easiest way to win a fight is to make your opponent not even want to fight you to begin with. I read a lot of comics, but I've never seen anyone stop a big bad by making the big bad just not feel like bothering anymore. It wouldn't even have to be emotional manipulation either. Could you have Ant-Man, just fly into somebody's body and give them horrific diarrhea? That would stop any attack they had planned, right? Turn a Thanos snap into a Thanos crap, and watch him take that gauntlet off real quick so he can get to the toilet paper. Anyway, yeah, I can see what Prime is saying here. It would be a huge win for the Decepticons if Prime just retires from the war effort entirely, leaving the Autobots leaderless and without the matrix of, well, either creation or leadership. In issue 5, which we just read, is referred to as the creation matrix. But whether or not that's still the case at this point in the comics, I don't know. From inside the Ark, a surprised speech bubble says, he's still up there! Luckily, these Autobots all opt to tell us each other's names because I've never seen them before, So we've got Joyride here on the left. He's in Christmas colours. He's got like red legs and arms, a yellow face and a green torso. It looks like he's about to go to a Christmas party or something. And there's one with a blue helmet, an orange face and a yellow body. That's Slapdash. Joyride notes that when Prime says he needs time to think, he really means time and he really thinks. Slapdash says that Joyride's assessment of the situation is correct, so he should probably just leave Prime to it and shut the door. He says it's cold enough to freeze your diodes off. Huh. So Transformers can feel and are bothered by the temperature. At least for now they are, right? How long do you think it will be until we see someone surviving, swimming in lava or something? I'm not a betting man, but I'd be willing to place a very small and sensible wager that at some point in these comics, somewhere, someone goes into lava and comes out just fine. I feel like that's just a safe guess. Joyride reaches up to a control panel next to the door, and Slapdash thanks him. He's watching TV and says that Earth is a weird planet, but TV is excellent. He says that the show he's watching right now is called Miami Metal Clamp or something. Vice, get it? Metal Clamp, Vice. Silly. Another new Autobot appears now, and Slapdash calls him Getaway, so we learn his name too. Getaway says that watching humans hitting each other isn't going to help Prime. The other Autobots are worried about Prime, and so is he. But Slapdash kind of brushes him off and says, okay, go ahead and worry about him. If Prime wants help, he'll ask. Which was true of the old Prime. I'm not so sure about this new Prime, though. Slapdash thinks that it's probably all something that Prime needs to work out for himself. And in the meantime, he wants to watch TV. But just then, a news flash cuts off Miami Metal Clamp to deliver an important announcement. A small and quiet town named Border Flats has been completely destroyed by giant robots. Even this far into the comics, not everyone can distinguish Autobots and Decepticons, it seems. It's not like they have brightly coloured symbols or anything to help you. Anyway, the news reporter hams it up a bit by adding in that families were just sitting down to have their Christmas dinners when the unknown robots showed up and turned what was supposed to be a peaceful day into a horrific day. The property damage is extensive, though because this is a kids' comic, no fatalities have been reported. There very specifically and certainly have not been any human deaths at all. They make sure that you know that. Getaway scowls at the TV and pounds his fist on his palm and says that the scenes of destruction they're seeing have the mark of the Decepticons all over them, and that they should go and check it out. According to the computer, Border Flats isn't far from the Ark, which is lucky. They don't have to drive far in the snow. They don't bother with snow chains on their tires either, I guess because when you're transformed into robot mode, that stuff just ends up looking kinky. Even so, Slapdash is annoyed about having to go out in the cold weather, and then those three people from the cover show up and also decide to use each other's names. And thank goodness, because we wouldn't want to continue reading not knowing that their names were Hotwire, Rev, and Lube. Come on! Come on, I don't even need to say anything. Who bloody approved that? Jeez. This is just a little bit of a spoiler, and it's absolutely bizarre. So once again, I'll hide it and warn you to skip ahead a bit if you don't want to know exactly who these guys are. These three call themselves the Power Masters, and they say that they'll help to keep the Autobots warm in the snow because they're going to go so fast they won't even notice the cold. Getaway says, let's go, but quietly. Prime has enough to deal with right now, and he'd rather they don't draw any attention to themselves. And then these three, what I thought were humans, I hope they're robots, or androids or something, but they might just be regular people in exosuits. They each, curl themselves up into a ball and become engines that can be used inside the car Transformers to, I guess, boost their power? That's absolutely batshit to me. If those are humans in suits, that's especially weird because that's so dangerous. And not only that, it's pointless because they could just get out of the suit and put it into the car and therefore avoid any danger of being crushed to death or shot by a laser or whatever. Out of context like this, it doesn't really spoil anything for me, but it gives me a lot of questions for later. What the hell is going on here? This is mental. Back outside, Prime is still pondering himself, his state of mind and his feelings, wondering if he'll ever be able to recover whatever it was he lost. He looks over at the Ark, which has 3 cars departing from it. Well, that doesn't seem to bother him. Also, their idea of discreet was apparently just driving out of the front door. But it didn't really make a difference anyway. Prime turns around and walks away through the snow, thinking that if he can find whatever it was that made him care so deeply before, he might be able to get those lost emotions back. What was it that made him risk not only his own life, but the lives of the other Autobots as well, to save the humans? He really wants to find his answers, and he says, to learn to love this world all over again. There's a cool close-up of Prime's eyes and his brow wrinkling as he starts to think back. All the way back to the beginning. The Autobots' first waking moments after crash landing on Earth, which he says was 4 years ago. I wonder if that was accurate to how long the comic had been running at the time. I think so, it sounds about right. Back then, the ship's computer, which he name drops as Auntie, which is interesting given the UK story we recently read where Auntie was most certainly not just the ship's computer. Anyway, Auntie begins to reassemble all of the Transformers, Autobot and Decepticon, who were on board the Ark when it crashed. In the picture, a blue body is being repaired, and on the monitor in the background we can see a picture of a toaster. I don't know what Auntie was doing. But maybe as Prime suggested in Raiders of the Lost Ark, she was very badly damaged in that crash. That said though, she did eventually manage to piece everyone back together well enough, so maybe she was just figuring things out at that point. This memory seems to spark some other realization for Prime, who thinks that even back then, right at the start, he had the human safety in mind. In their earliest battles when Prime fought Megatron, he was more worried about making sure Buster and Sparkplug were okay than he was about himself. Which is true, I remember noticing and commenting on that in the second issue. Prime's very first order in the Decepticon-Autobot clash was to get the humans to safety. But why? Prime wonders. What happened before the Ark crashed into the Earth? He remembers the Decepticons boarding the Ark, and that clearing the asteroid belt in order to let Cybertron pass through safely had left the Autobots tired and weakened, and in that condition they had not been able to stand up to the power of the Decepticons. Coming to the realization that the only option left to the Autobots to deny the Decepticons their victory was setting the Ark on a suicidal course to collide with the nearest planet, which actually we learned was all Auntie's idea. Prime just agreed with it. And that's it, he concludes, yelling, "By the Matrix!" Not only does he want to protect Earth from the Decepticons, but also from, quote, the sins of the Autobots, which he doesn't extrapolate any further on, but I take as meaning his responsibility for having brought the Decepticons and the Cybertronian War to Earth in the first place. Something I've always felt Prime kept in mind when considering all his actions. He even explicitly stated as much in one of the previous issues. The humans never asked to be involved in this fight, and he's aware that any fighting between the Autobots and the Decepticons will have direct and damaging consequences for the humans. Over in Border Flats now, Getaway, Slapdash and Joyride arrive, and the destruction is even worse than they saw on the TV. They comment that the Decepticons really did a number on this place. Slapdash is still griping about being cold. He says, maybe the Decepticons set all those fires to keep warm. I get it, I really hate being cold too. Getaway has had enough of this nonsense though, and he tells him to can it. And he says that, like I was just saying, the Autobots share at least some of the blame for this. It's their fault that the Decepticons are on Earth at all, and that humans didn't want to be involved in this war. They drive down the streets and everything is broken, smashed, or on fire. Two people standing out in the street are perturbed by these fancy cars, which have just arrived, and they say the ghouls have started coming in and that they should go away. They don't want their grief to be a show for anybody. Slapdash asks Joyride if he thinks those humans recognize them, but Joyride says that he doesn't think so. But it makes sense that these people are annoyed. Christmas Day is normally a happy day for people. They come to a stop on what looks like some kind of outcropping, I think that's the right word, overlooking more of the town, and they see a crane which is helping to stand up a huge broken Christmas tree. Because priorities, right? Never mind all those houses that are on fire and stuff. Joyride continues that Christmas is a time when differences are put aside to celebrate. It's a day for peace. Getaway says that knowing that only makes him feel worse about the state the town has been reduced to. Not only have the Decepticons crushed the town, he says, they also crushed the spirit of the people on their day of hope. He wants to make the Decepticons who did this pay, and he says, Joyride? Who replies that he's already searching the area for Transformer life signs. He finds 3 kilometers northwest of where they currently are. But they must be headed towards them because they find fresh tracks in the snow. Getaway says, let's get 'em, Power Masters, and the 3 keep driving. Soon they start to close in on 3 silhouettes in the distance. Getaway spots them and says that they should get into close range, transform, and prepare for battle. He says, let's teach these creeps a lesson they'll never forget. And we can see the 3 cars' headlights shining between some red-coloured feet and ankles. The 3 Transformers do a similar diving tackle to the one that Streetwise used last Christmas. That's a nice tradition to start for the holidays. Getaway is the one doing the talking again, and he says it's time to show the Decepticons that the 3 of them are as fast with their fists as they are on the road. Slapdash does this kind of backwards sweeping kick, which he says he learned from Miami Metal Clamp, which trips up the mystery Decepticon, who falls over backwards. Joyride says that he's going to make the person he's attacking think twice about attacking peaceful human settlements, and he's either slamming his fists on someone's chest or otherwise throttling them by the neck. It's not really clear. But he calls them a crummy, and then in surprise, sees the emblem on their chest and says, Autobot? Some more Autobots get introduced here. I have no idea if they featured in the comic before now, or if this Christmas special is actually really important because it's the first appearance of these guys. I kind of doubt it, but Getaway says he knows them. They're Sandstorm, Inferno, and Broadside, the Autobot Advanced Surveillance Unit. What that is, I don't know, and it's not super important for right now, so Let's just get to that when we get to it properly in our read-through. One of them says, "Nice greeting. Whatever happened to hi, how's it going?" Is it me, or is that the writer being just a little bit peeved that they need to make everyone say everyone else's name all the time? I get how that's bothersome and clunky and breaks the flow when it's characters we ought to know well, but it's so handy for me and for us reading this issue out of context and out of order. I would have no idea who any of these people were otherwise. I'd be there googling green and red Autobot and hoping to work it out. Getaway replies that greeting was no more than the three of them deserve after all the damage they've done to the town, and he's mean-mugging and pointing his finger right in the red and blue guy's face. And the poor guy does look quite sorry about it. He tells Getaway that it was all an accident. The new guys look sheepish and try to explain that they got caught up celebrating Christmas with the humans, and when they transformed into their robot modes, the humans freaked out. Again with this, I guess a giant, sentient, transforming alien robot invasion still isn't global common knowledge 4 years in? Sure. They tried their best to avoid stepping on anyone, but in doing so, this is ridiculous. They just kind of fell on the entire town. And the more they tried to avoid doing damage, the more they ended up doing. So they just ran away to try and stop themselves making things worse. I don't know if I believe that quite. Like, how catastrophically do you have to fall over to destroy an entire town? But that's their story anyway. Getaway says that he doesn't want to burst Broadside's bubble, but by the time they did that, there wasn't really much left to save. One of the surveillance team argues back that they feel bad enough about what they did already. Getaway doesn't need to harp on about it. But a voice from out of the panel says, "Your shame is nothing compared to mine, Inferno." It's Prime! But how? Asks someone we can't see because they're off to the left, outside the panel. "How did I find you?" Prime asks, and he explains it away quickly by saying that he returned to the Ark, which he must have found empty, so he checked the Ark's tapes, and he saw what they'd all gone to do. "This incident is a good reminder for all of them," Prime continues, "that they don't belong on this planet. Part of his own shame is that he forgot about that. But that isn't the worst of it. He had forgotten why the Autobots must protect the Earth and the lives on it, even at the expense of their own lives. Because the hand that pushed the button to bring them all to Earth in the first place was his." Guided by Auntie. By preventing the Decepticon victory, he unknowingly put billions of innocent lives in danger. Which, while that is true now, cut yourself some slack, Prime. Earth was uninhabited at that time, and Prime couldn't have predicted either their survival or that the ship and everyone on it would lay dormant for 4 million years, in which time life evolved. I just feel like both of those facts are critical, and he's beating himself up about everything but leaving out those very important facts. However noble his motives, he says, he went against everything the Autobots stand for. Getaway pipes up again. He's talkative, isn't he? And he says that he understands. Christmas is a time for sharing and giving, but all the Autobots have done is share their age-old war with the humans and spread misery and destruction. Prime says it's time things changed, and that all of them should begin by cleaning up the mess they made of Border Flats. Slapdash is pleased because at least the snowstorm seems to be over, and so is this story. That is, after Prime says, "I fear, Slapdash, with so many Decepticons still at large on Earth, the storm has only just begun." Do you see what I mean now about this pairing nicely with Starscream's story? We had him learning nothing, but Prime technically learning, but really just remembering the responsibility that he and all the Autobots have to the humans because of the way they've become tangled up in their war. Not the most Christmas-centric story. I mean, it snowed a bit, and the date was mentioned, but it's a good moral story, I think, about accountability. And it's a nice piece of character building for Prime to show how heavily his responsibilities weigh on his mind. Even having forgotten them, due to whatever it was he has just gone through before the story, he's able to recover and remember them just by thinking back about his own past actions. I like this story. It felt important. I don't think it's going to have broken up what was going on in the comic too much. And actually, if you know Prime has just returned to Earth without his memory, and then you skip this issue, you might read the next one and be confused about why he suddenly remembers everything. I don't know who the advanced surveillance team are or what exactly it is they do. And the 3 humanoid characters we met earlier raised just so many questions that I look forward to finding out the answers to later. I really enjoyed Wildman's art throughout too, so I'll be looking forward to reading more stuff with his work in, though this was apparently an early issue for him, so it'll be quite some time before we get to see that, I think. Before we go, some lucky backers in America have already received their Fancy Pants new Transformers hardback compendiums. Screaming Grasshopper Mouse from the Transformers AutoBook Club Discord shared these images of their Til All Are One box set, and look at the size of this thing. It's slimmer and shorter than I was imagining, only based on a bunch of other comic omnibuses I already have, but by the Matrix, look how thick that thing is. I'm going to be reading my comics from those once I receive them, but I'm actually a bit worried about how carefully I'll need to do that. I think I'll have to put it on the desk to help me read it for sure. I don't see anyone picking that up to read it. It looks heavy enough that even reading it on your lap would be uncomfortable. I can't wait to get my hands on those, but that's all from me for this holiday special and for 2025. Though you might see a supercut of the first 4 issues back-to-back appear on YouTube and podcast services sometime in the coming weeks. It'll be a rerun for those of you who have heard it before, but I don't think I'll be able to put out anything new this side of the new year. I'll be away, taking a few weeks break over the holidays to travel, to see some good friends, eat far more than is strictly speaking necessary, drink more than is ever necessary, and to intentionally carve out some time to relax and do absolutely nothing. It's important. I only really learned the beauty of having absolutely nothing to do last Christmas. And even just a couple of days with nothing scheduled or planned really recharged my batteries. I hope wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you celebrate or don't, you'll at least get a break and some time to rest, and that you can spend it with people you love, doing things you love, or ideally both. I'll see you again in early 2026 when my good friend Dan and I will be reading issue 6, The Worst of Two Evils. Until then though, take care, be kind, and do good. Till all are one!